After thinking about this deeply for over a decade and sitting on a waitlist for 2 years, I'm finally getting top surgery as an autistic trans person. So without further ado, I'm finally saying ta-ta to my tatas. As I've gone through this process, I've had a lot of kind folks ask me about it, from getting started to preparing for surgery to documenting it all, so I thought I'd put together this little video so you could learn a little bit more about top surgery. And I'm not even joking when I tell you I am filming this the literal day before top surgery because this last month has been such a whirlwind of things. So let's get started. And don't forget I always put chapters in case you want to jump around. What is top surgery? Well, for anyone who isn't familiar, top surgery usually refers to an intentional double mastectomy to remove all or most of your breasts. This is particularly done by trans and non-binary people who are assigned female at birth who want to align better with their gender identity. And I can't emphasize enough that this surgery and other gender-affirming healthcare literally saves lives. And cis people get gender-affirming care too, all the time. What type of top surgery are you getting? I'm particularly getting a connected double incision because I have a larger chest and that is what is needed. Smaller chest sizes can actually just do incisions around the nipples, which is called a keyhole surgery. That means I'll have larger scars for sure, but I actually think that scars are pretty cool. In terms of nipple grafts, I'm actually not doing them at all. Not only is it easier to heal without them, but I just don't really have a strong reason to have them. I might get something tattooed down the line, but personally, I don't really plan on being shirtless too much after top surgery. My partner and I jokingly like to call it going Kyle XY, which I know isn't the same because that's no belly button, but I still find it really funny. So why top surgery for you personally? Well, not all trans people experience gender dysphoria around their chest. I certainly do. And maybe this is TMI, but I already share way too much around here, so oh well. Growing up, I actually didn't have any chest at all. Like, I was below an A cup, and it was a constant point of teasing on top of all my other socially awkward autistic traits. My first year of college, I hit a really late puberty, and literally went up to a C/D cup over the course of a few months. And that was really, for me, when the dysphoria started. This was around the same time I started going by corn full time, and started feeling a bit odd about using gendered pronouns. And while I didn't know that I was trans yet, what I did know is that I hated my new chest. Aside from grown men creepily staring me in public spaces at all times, which was gross, I just didn't feel like myself. It felt like I woke up in a body that wasn't mine, and I couldn't get used to it no matter how hard I tried. I'd look in the mirror and just feel this immense dissonance about my chest. And a lot of well-intentioned cis folks really want to understand why we feel this way, to do something as extreme as getting surgery. But it just doesn't feel so extreme when the alternative is so much worse. But I always remind folks, just like anything, you don't have to personally understand something to respect it. Because if you did truly understand these feelings, you probably would be trans as well. Well, how does being autistic affect your trans experience? Well, having a large chest suddenly amplified every sensory issue I had as an autistic person. The discomfort of having to wear a more supportive bra that dug in everywhere, the constant chafing at all times, the literal weight of my chest causing constant back pain. And I know I've made jokes about this before, but genuinely the sensory issues were just as big as a factor for me getting top surgery as gender dysphoria, and I don't think that makes either less valid. There's also something to say about the autistic experience that makes us feel more separated from societal conventions around gender and sexuality. Before I had the language to describe it, I always told people I felt like a little alien growing up. Like, you know, the media trope of an alien literally landing on a foreign planet and trying to study others to fit in, mimicking mannerisms, trying to copy speech patterns, and of course, doing a comically bad job at it. That was me. I stuck out a lot and didn't really get along with most kids my age. And I think that it's such a big impact on why I don't feel compelled to stick to these conventions around gender and sexuality because I don't understand them. And how could a disability like autism, which literally affects how I see everything, not affect my perception of my own gender? But of course, I'm not the first autistic trans person to feel this way. There's a reason why terms like autigender and neuroqueer have been created to describe our understanding of gender identity and sexuality as being inseparable from our neurotype. And honestly, I'm not a big fan of sharing statistics as I think these can be easily misunderstood when considering the sample size, but yes, many studies absolutely do suggest that autistic people are more likely to be queer, as well as a lot of trans people are more likely to be disabled. I also want to acknowledge as well that I've heard a few firsthand accounts from trans autistic people having their autistic diagnosis used against them to deny them gender-affirming care. And I don't say that to cause fear over getting diagnosed, but that it's something to consider and has an additional hoop for some autistic people. Unfortunately, there is a subset of people that don't believe autistic people are capable of understanding things like being trans and that we shouldn't have the right to make these decisions about our bodies, which is absolutely wrong and infantilizing. Are you excited? Very much so. I'm not particularly good at showing emotions, so don't let that fool you into thinking I'm not excited. This has been something I've been wanting to do for so many years, and now that it's finally here, it feels like such a whirlwind of emotions. And yes, I'm also very anxious because I hate going to the doctor and even the most basic of medical procedures. Like for context, I literally get knocked out of the dentist or I'll have a panic attack. And maybe it's just the many years of antidepressants and therapy that has me thinking, well, I'll just deal with that when it happens. I'm just trying to not think about that part and just focus on the process and healing. How did you start the process? Well, back in 2024, I finally went searching the internet to start the top surgery process. And like most things that involve healthcare, I found out it largely depends on where you live. For context, I'm based in Oregon, and I'm very privileged to live in a more progressive state that has trans healthcare protected at the state level. Insurances are actually required here to cover things like top surgery and gender-affirming healthcare, which is a big deal. But because I have private insurance, this pretty much means I'll have to pay my deductible, which is how much I knew to save up for. There were quite a few hospitals and offices specializing in top surgery here, but I had to find ones that were actually covered by my insurance. That ended up being OHSU and Legacy Health. I ended up calling both surgery offices and found out that both had 1 to 2 year wait lists, which honestly made me wish I had started this process a lot sooner. But to join a top surgery waitlist in Oregon, you need to have 2 things. 1, a referral from your primary care provider, and 2, a formal letter from a psychiatrist diagnosing you with gender dysphoria, both of which usually have to be faxed directly from each office to the hospital of your choice. A couple weeks later, I had those documents sent to both places and patiently waited. OHSU actually called me back almost immediately and scheduled a consultation appointment all the way out in 2026, which was 2 years out at the time, but also told me that with cancellations, this appointment would most likely be moved up to 2025. Reddit actually ended up being the most helpful place for me to navigate this process, so I can't recommend enough searching top surgery in your area, city, state, country, as there's usually whole threads of people detailing how they did it. The waiting. A year went by. I didn't hear back again until the spring of 2025 when Legacy Health reached back out to schedule 2 preliminary appointments. Both were e-appointments, and the first was more of a new patient exam asking about my background and experiences. And the other was more of an information-heavy appointment where we went through different kinds of top surgery, like keyhole or double incision, other kinds of therapies, and more. Honestly, the thing I remember the most is them repeatedly making me confirm that I don't smoke because apparently if you do, your nipple grafts can fall off while healing. Absolutely nightmare fuel, and the internet told me it was true. At this point, I was already pretty sure I was going the no nipple graft route, but this only confirmed it. Then they told me they would be reaching out sometime in the next 3 months to schedule my pre-op appointment, but not to contact them first because they were very busy. 3 months went by, and I wasn't surprised not to hear back yet. At this point, I hadn't heard anything back from OHSU either, which was pretty odd after they made that 1 year comment. But then another month went by, and another, which finally led to me calling Legacy Health in late 2025 and hearing some bad news. Turns out, they had actually forgot to submit my info 6 months ago, and had I not called back, they would have never contacted me ever again. They were super apologetic, but of course, it was still super frustrating. And when I searched online about this, turns out this happens a lot. So friends, please make sure you're actually on your top surgery waitlist and check in with them. Because of the whole mix-up, they actually offered to bump me to the top of the list after losing all that time, which led me to getting the fateful call this past December to finally schedule my pre-op appointment in late January. The pre-op appointment. I really wasn't sure what to expect for this appointment, but it was the first in-person appointment I actually had for top surgery, so I was super anxious. So naturally, I showed up 45 minutes early and planned my parking course of action using online maps. I showed up in a mask with my meds and documents, and it ended up being roughly an hour appointment with a lot of waiting. A nurse initially took all my information, which was pretty repetitive at this point. Towards the end, I actually met my surgeon, who was the first person in the office I saw actually wearing a mask. We had a little mask for mask moment, and even talked about how long COVID disproportionately affects trans people. She had me change my top into a hospital gown, then she came back and did a breast exam, took some measurements, and probably the worst part was getting my bare chest photographed. Yes, I know this is their job and they were super professional, but of course, it's still really awkward. Then after I changed back into my shirt, we went over a pretty standard surgery consent form, which does include risks like infection, numbness, and yes, even death. Which I know sounds terrifying, but this is just standard hospital language, and statistically, top surgery is super safe. Then I finally had my top surgery date set for March 6th, and the real prep began. My top surgery checklist. After scrolling for hours through top surgery threads and doing multiple walkthroughs with nurses, this is the list I put together, which I will say is on the over-the-top safe side because that's how I am. Now, I will be doing an evaluation in the latter part of this video where I go over what was actually helpful and what wasn't. A mastectomy vest. This is a fancy vest that holds your drains up while healing. A medical binder, a backup option in case the provided binder sucks. A long phone charging cord, for easier use while healing. Body wipes, to keep myself clean in the no shower phase. A grabber, because my arm mobility will be pretty limited after. Antibacterial soap, to sanitize your hands before touching any wound areas. Aquaphor, to protect drain sites while showering. Disposable medical gloves, to keep hands sterile while emptying drains. Tylenol, this is one of the few kinds of pain meds you can use right after. Back pain patches, to help treat inevitable pain from back sleeping. Nausea medicine, as it's often a post-surgery side effect after anesthesia. Antihistamine medicine, apparently it can alleviate some itching post-surgery. Throat lozenges, folks recommended these to alleviate discomfort after intubation. Laxatives, unfortunately both anesthesia and pain meds can cause constipation. A very long straw, I've heard these are super helpful for drinking with limited mobility. Mastectomy pillow, great for the drive home and wearing at home for extra protection. Neck pillow, can make sleeping upright a little more comfortable. Wedge pillow, have been told these are crucial for sleeping on your back at night. TV desk tray, great for easy access to food, drinks, or anything else. A step stool, to reach higher placed items in my home while healing. A lanyard, to hold my drains while showering the first week. Comfy t-shirts to wear under the binder to make it more comfortable. Button-up shirts to hold my drains or add easily removable warm layers. A bidet. Some folks said wiping was hard while healing, so we'll see. Some other important preparations. I also think it's important to note that I spent a lot of 2025 strengthening up my body before doing top surgery. I also have hypermobile EDS, which is why I initially started doing light strength training to help build up some muscle mass and prevent further dislocations. My chronic pain is still going strong, but I have built up a lot of muscle mass around my chest and arms, which I have been told will help with my top surgery results. And because I have ARFID and a history of disordered eating, I had to do some nutrient panels and blood tests prior to ensure I was healthy enough for surgery. And probably a big thanks to meal replacement drinks, I have passed all my tests with flying colors. And I'll be honest, that I'm a pretty small-sized person. And unfortunately, a lot of top surgery doctors are pretty anti-fat and won't take you on if they don't think you'll have perfect results. I've had a few friends denied for top surgery because of their weight, and it absolutely sucks. As far as time off, I work for myself, so I make my own schedule, but I did take a full 2 weeks off and did a low schedule third week. How much time you need to heal largely depends on your occupation, but since I work at a computer, I was told 2 weeks was more than enough. And honestly, taking off more than 2 weeks is really hard for my studio and income, so hopefully that works. I'll let you know how it goes. My spouse also took the day off of surgery and the following week after to take care of me. The night before, I picked up my prescription earlier this week, and here's the routine I'm following tonight. 1. I'm moving anything I use daily around the house to below chest level placement as I won't be able to raise my arms for quite a while. 2. I can't eat anything after midnight tonight and can only have clear liquids up to 4 hours before my surgery. 3. I'm going to wash my sheets and have my pets sleep separately. And yes, they're going to have to do this during the whole healing process, and Bean and Choppy are going to be devastated. 4. Both me and my spouse are going to shower both tonight and in the morning with antibacterial soap to reduce bacteria before surgery. Now, I've had nurses run me through tomorrow's schedule over 3 times so I know what to expect, but this is going to be the last time I film before getting top surgery, so wish me luck. Bye friends. The surgery. Hey, it's literally already been 3 months since I recorded the first part, and as you can tell, I'm very happy with the results, but let's talk about how the actual day of surgery went. I was so nervous when we first arrived, as this was the first time we'd actually been to the hospital side of this building, which was really big and bustling, so I was eternally grateful that my partner was with me through this process. After getting checked in, they brought us to a pretty open hospital area, think like any ER show where there's just hallways of beds with curtains separating them. I was pretty surprised they immediately asked me to get undressed, wipe myself down, and put on the hospital gown, but I guess, what else would I do? But I sat like that in the hospital bed, very much naked and weird. But they did have this fancy air unit literally connected to my hospital gown that blew nice, warm and toasty air into it, which was very nice. And then they had this anti-blood clot device essentially squeezing my legs at different times, which felt so relaxing. They of course had a few briefs of what they were doing me today, had me take my pre-surgery meds, put an IV in, and lastly the surgeon came and drew on me. They even gave me an anti-nausea patch to put on the back of my ear, as I was definitely concerned about the nausea here, and more info on that later. Something that did surprise me was that every medical professional I saw in those 2 hours was wearing a mask as promised, as was my partner and I, and the only people who weren't masking was other patients of course. Which, you know, seems pretty important in the surgical wing of a hospital, but what do I know? And somehow that waiting lasted 2 hours, but I was so incredibly anxious that I don't even remember how I passed that time. When it was finally close to my surgery time, I said goodbye to my partner, and they wheeled me away. And this is going to sound really silly, but a lot of medical dramas may believe that operating rooms are quite small, but this was quite large, like a whole classroom with medical devices all against the wall, which honestly makes more sense. The doctor said hey again, the anesthesiologist came in, and this is when they finally asked me to remove my mask and started the anesthesia. I was out like a light, and it literally felt like a second later I woke up in a recovery room. And I can only describe this as like those scenes in video games where you start the campaign and the whole room is spinning and fading. Apparently very accurate. But I wasn't in pain at all, and surprisingly my throat didn't hurt from being intubated like others told me it would. But I was so wildly thirsty to the point that the first thing I said when I woke up was water, 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 and the attending nurse kept giving me ice cubes, which was not enough. They told me that they couldn't give me water because it would make me sick, and they were absolutely right because even the ice cubes were starting to make me violently ill. But after 30 minutes, I was starting to feel a little bit better, which is when they gave me my mask back and wheeled me back down to the other side of the hospital where my partner was waiting. And I was absolutely exhausted at this point, but we had to wait until someone came down from physical therapy to show me how to move my arms after surgery. They finally did and showed me how to safely move my arms, do stretches, and take care of myself while healing. And at this point, I was getting so incredibly nauseous that I couldn't sit up anymore, but I already hit my max on anti-nausea meds, so I just had to wait it out. And I did finally start to feel a little bit better, so I thought, okay, let's try to go home. Mistake. We hit that rush hour traffic, and for context, I am no stranger to car sickness, like that is something I always deal with, but this was next level. And thinking about all the people stuck in traffic looking over at me, clearly hyperventilating into a barf bag, is now funny in hindsight, but it was a rough drive home. And after we got home, I actually did start to feel better after a couple of hours. I got some food in, but as soon as I took that nightly dose of pain meds, I was incredibly nauseous again. Like, I don't think I slept more than a couple of hours that night because I was so incredibly nauseous. And I'm not trying to paint a picture, but when you've barely eaten or drank anything in 24 hours, there is not much to throw up, and that's arguably worse. The day after, the nausea was just getting worse and worse, and even with prescription-grade anti-nausea meds, there was no relief in sight. So I actually decided to stop the pain meds altogether after just one day. The healing. That first week was pretty diabolical. Between the nausea, not eating, not sleeping, and having tubes connected to me under a binder-like torture device, I was not having it. I think what surprised me most the first few days is that I didn't even have the energy to watch the movies or shows that I put together to play games, nothing. I was just sleeping and resting all the time. And I only took 2 weeks off, so I was honestly so worried at this time. Like, did I severely underestimate how taxing a major surgery would be? Probably, but luckily it all worked out. Spoiler, I felt so much better after getting the drains out and actually could play some of the new Pocopia game on my second week off. And while I would have liked more time off, I did begrudgingly go back to work after those 2 weeks. But here's a sort of general timeline of my healing process to know what to expect. Week 1, hell. Don't expect to do anything. Week 2, post-op appointment, drains out, and start extending arm mobility. Week 3, back to work. Week 4, usually when most people get their binders off, not for me. Week 5, can do some light exercise. Week 6, another post-op appointment, got my binder off, can start doing physical exercise slowly, starting to massage my scars, and doing all the silicone tape treatments. Things that surprised me the most. The nausea was horrible. Yeah. I have not really seen anyone talk about this, so I'm just going to assume this is more of a me being unlucky thing. So it turns out I might have an opioid allergy because I took all the precautions, did the ear patch, tried the prescription grade anti-nausea meds, and it did nothing. And I'm used to nausea as someone who is always car sick, but this level of nausea was hellish. And literally, the minute I got the pain meds out of my system, I was completely fine. So I do wish I had pushed back more on this when I had already told them that opioids made me sick in the past, and they told me it would totally be fine. It wasn't. The post-op binder was sensory hell. If you've been following me on social media the past few weeks, you know I've talked about at length about this literal torture device. It is incredibly stiff, and I can only describe it as the literal texture of stiff cardboard pressing against you at all times, which I think would be pretty bad for anyone, but with my autistic sensory issues, it is all I could think about. Once again, I've seen very few similar binders to this online. Most are just like bandages or a front or zipper clasp, and my surgeon told me that it was because of my wound size and my cup size that I needed a more supportive binder like this. But I've also seen people with larger cup sizes not get this type of binder, so I think it largely just depends on your surgeon's preferences. I also wish I had asked more about this prior, because right after surgery, they made it sound like I had to wear this very specific binder for many weeks after. But when I got to my first post-op appointment and told them how much I was struggling with it, they were just like, oh yeah, try these bandages instead. And I was like, huh? What do you mean I've been wearing this literal torture device for nothing when alternatives existed? So do ask your doctor ahead of time what to expect binder-wise and if you can get your own. And in my case, the bandage wrap was actually the most comfy for me. It's a little more annoying to put on every day, but it does take that weight off your shoulders and just around your chest, which I found to be a really big relief at that time. Which brings me to, the drains weren't as bad as I thought they'd be. This is mostly what I see people talk about online, and maybe I just got lucky because I've heard the horror stories too. They were uncomfortable, don't get me wrong, but my binder was taking up most of my discomfort tolerance. I'm also not squeamish to bodily fluids, so I didn't have an issue draining and measuring the liquids. And weirdly, it did not smell at all, which was a fear of mine. And I got super lucky because my fluid output was actually really low the entire time, so I got to get them out a little bit earlier at my 6-day post-op appointment. So I didn't have to have them in for that long, so maybe I'm just not the right person to ask about this. One thing I didn't mention online is how bad the removal appointment went because I didn't want to scare people. And if you're a little squeamish about body things, I would skip to the next point as a warning. I'm serious, okay? So they don't use any numbing. They just pull it out, and I was told this doesn't really hurt. But turns out we had too much suction in one of my drains. So when they went to pull it out, there was a lot of resistance. And when it finally came out, it was like an 8 out of 10 pain. I almost passed out. Also, I don't know why I was under the impression there was only like a few inches in there, but they pulled out like a full 15 inches and I felt every inch of it spiral out of me. I can only imagine that that's what it's like to get a tapeworm removed, like that scene in Ugly Stepsister. Sorry for conjuring that image, friends. I watch a lot of horror movies. So yeah, almost passed out, but I'm holding my poker face because they told me it wouldn't hurt, and what do you know, the other one didn't at all. So once again, I think I was just unlucky there. Another thing I didn't realize until I showered, which was only after a couple days because I didn't have nipple grafts, is that the drain sites were like a lot lower, like a few inches below the chest incision. Also, when you get them removed, they just slap a bandage on it and call it good, which I really did not appreciate because there was literal holes there. They did heal up though, but honestly, I find the whole drains thing very interesting because I've seen folks with similar size removals not have any, so I think this largely depends on the surgeon's preferences. And the only time I see that the drains were actually painfully annoying was at night, which honestly needs its own point, so let's do that. Back sleeping sucks. Caveat, it sucks if you're not used to it. I'm a shameless shrimp sleeper, all curled up just like a croissant. But you can only sleep on your back for the first few weeks, if not more, and that was brutal. Like, I was using a wedge pillow and all these pillows to not roll over at night, but I had no idea how much it would hurt. Like, just this constant fire shooting pain in my back at all times. Nothing would help. About a week in, I started sleeping with back patches on and using a pillow under my legs like my mom recommended, and that did help some. But honestly, I think I mostly just got used to it. And it probably wasn't until a good 2 months out that I could comfortably sleep on my side again. The pain was super manageable. I will say, having chronic pain probably prepared me well for this because most days I'm a 2 to 3 on the pain scale. And besides the drain removal, the whole process was super manageable. Like I said, I went off the prescription grade meds the second day and was only doing Tylenol for 2 weeks after. That was more than adequate. I never felt like any shooting pain, just a lot of soreness and dull throbbing. Honestly, the sensory discomfort topped the pain at any given time. While it was tender for a while, it honestly wasn't that bad. You have more movement than you think. This probably surprised me the most, but only an hour after surgery, I could use the bathroom by myself, and I thought I would need help. But actually, you have so much more movement than you imagine. Even the therapist I worked with right after told me that it's a very common misconception that you can't raise your arms above your head. You can, you just can't raise your upper arms above your head, which actually means you get a lot of flexibility and pivoting your elbows and using your arms in this range. I could pick up and grab most things, wash my face, brush my teeth, eat food, etc. It just took a little more effort, which isn't a small feat if you're already working on top of executive dysfunction as a disabled person. What actually is super annoying is the weight limit. You're not allowed to lift more than 10 pounds for the first 6 weeks, which notably includes your own body weight. So you have to be careful getting up from the bed or off the ground without using your own body to push yourself up. My partner and I have actually been joking about how killer my abs must be after the past few weeks after I've been rising from every surface like Dracula. But not being able to pick up packages, move things, or pick up my dogs was super annoying, which leads me to, my dogs were so good during the whole process. I was really worried about the sleeping situation specifically because they're used to sleeping in our bedroom at night, but they did great sleeping in the next room over and only whined a little bit. And while I couldn't pet them too much the first 2 weeks to avoid bacteria, they made great couch company as I was resting. We let them back in the room on the second week, but they weren't allowed on the bed. Only issue we had was in the 4th week, where Bean hardcore shoulder checked me when I tried to stop him from chasing a squirrel outside. Lesson learned. The fatigue is real. Of course, the first week was the worst, but it did surprise me how long it lasted. Like, even after a month, it felt like I would pass out if I did the smallest amount of physical activity. Just taking a shower would absolutely wipe me out for the day. So do be prepared for that. And now that I'm almost 3 months out, I just feel a little bit off and a bit more winded than usual. One of my shoulders went numb. I didn't notice it until a few weeks after, which is arguably the funniest part, but my partner touched there, and I went, huh, I can't feel that. Totally normal apparently, and nothing to worry about, but it can take anywhere from months to years to fully heal. Now it's like 50% numb there, so I think we're making some progress, maybe? I did have to bind longer. So most people bind for the first 4 weeks post-op to help with inflammation and healing, but I was healing quite slowly and had to bind for a full 6 weeks. Which, knowing that some people had to do multiple months, I can't be too upset about. But this is very likely tied to me having hypermobile EDS, which is a connective tissue disorder. As I also heal a lot slower on tattoos, this is obviously a lot larger than a tattoo. But man, those last few weeks of binding were the worst, I have to say. Because yes, you wear it all day, all night, the only relief is the brief time you shower. Not fun. My scabs didn't even fully come off until week 6, so don't feel bad if you see those little keyhole surgery scars online that look like nothing happened a week later. No. I got a full connected incision from pit to pit. It looks like a large scar, and that is what I signed up for. And probably the most surprising thing for me out of this whole experience was how instant the gender euphoria felt. A lot of people warned me that I wouldn't feel it right away, which is probably a valid expectation to have going into this. It's also probably a lot different based on your transition goals, but I wanted to be flat, so when I woke up, and I was, it felt amazing. I spent the first few days just looking in the mirror and being so excited about it. And by the time I could actually try on clothes, I was just beaming. It was just like, man, this is it. It felt just as right as I thought it would be. Just every time I think about it, I can't stop smiling because this is my life now and I'm so happy. Also, just from like a pain perspective, having a very large cup size on a very small frame has literally given me the worst chronic back pain since puberty. And it's just gone overnight. Like that. Like no one told me it was this easy to keep your posture when you don't have 5 pounds literally weighing you down. Like yes, I got both a metaphorical and physical weight off my chest. But I promise that will be the last time I say that. Probably. Silicone taping lasts that long? I honestly didn't read that much about this stage in the process prior to getting top surgery, but it's a long one. Like my surgeon recommended me taping for a minimum of 6 months. Essentially, it's just like using reusable rolls or bandages made of silicone to help with scarring and healing. And I did make the mistake of buying individual bandage boxes that cost like $30 each because that's what people online told me to do. Don't! It takes the whole box to cover a full connected incision. And yes, you can rewear these up to 10 days, but a whole box for 10 days, 3 a month, is $90 a month. And thanks to some lovely followers on Instagram, I found out they have silicone rolls you can cut down instead. It's much cheaper per square inch, and I got these 2 rolls that are roughly 10 feet for both $35. I haven't done the math, but I'm probably using 1.5 feet every 7 days, and that's already a lot cheaper. Obviously, not everyone cares about scarring. Some people use bio oil, some people skip this step altogether. But it's not uncomfortable wearing the tape, which is what mattered most to me personally. And lastly, I had no idea how much sensory issues would disappear after. Like the summer has always been my greatest nemesis as a sensory avoiding autistic person. The heat, the sweat, everything. Think 90-degree weather is already bad enough. Try doing that in a binder with a double D cup. Truly hell. So this being my first summer not wearing a binder is already big, but not wearing a bra at all? Like no one told me it's literally so comfy to just wear a shirt with nothing under. Those digging straps, boob sweat? Never again. On top of the overwhelming gender euphoria, it's literally one of the best experiences I've had post-op. What I did and didn't use. Honestly, I'm usually way overprepared for everything, and as expected, I had some things I didn't use. And I always rather be overprepared. But in the hopes of maybe saving you money or helping you prioritize, I'm gonna share things I did use. Medicine. Benadryl, probiotics, anti-nausea, laxatives, and much more. I use mostly all of this and need an extra Tylenol because I went off the pain meds so quickly. And unexpectedly, I bought a lot of pain patches to deal with the sleeping arrangement. Also, please spare me the unoriginal autism Tylenol jokes. Long bendy straws. Surprisingly, so very helpful the first few days where I couldn't get out of bed easily. This made me feel like a literal hamster, but as I like to say, it's not silly if it works. Bath wipes. I already use these a lot as a disabled person, and these are perfect for the no shower phase. And while I could shower pretty early in the healing process, it took a lot of energy, and these kept me feeling fresh. A wedge pillow. A lot of people said this was optional, but this was literally the only way I could sleep or relax without being in pain. You also just can't replicate it well with other pillows, and I was using that thing 24/7. A lanyard. I already had one at home, so I didn't need to buy one, but this is perfect for holding your drains while you're showering. Comfy t-shirts. Absolutely needed for wearing under your binder, but I wouldn't go out of your way to buy new ones because these will get stained. Things I didn't use. The grabber. So many people said this would be helpful, but I don't think I'm coordinated enough to use this, nor was it actually helpful with anything heavy like a water bottle. Honestly, I just found it annoying. A neck pillow. Once again, just not really necessary for home use. I just use a smaller pillow under my head most days. A mastectomy pillow. I saw these on all the lists, and while I use it for the drive home, I never used it after that. Honestly, most pillows can replicate this, and I would just bring a small pillow in the car to keep the seatbelt from touching you. A medical binder. The clinic actually gave me multiple of theirs, but I didn't know they would, so I bought a fancy one instead. But turns out, it was too small, even though I measured using their size chart and I couldn't return it because I had already opened it. And the Velcro medical bandage I used instead ended up being super cheap, very comfortable, and I just picked it up at the local grocery store. A mastectomy vest. I splurged on a more fancy one, so I feel a little bit silly, but turns out my binder was so long and the tubing was so short that it actually wasn't long enough to fit into any type of pocket. And my drains were actually just safety pinned to my binder, so I didn't need anything to hold them. Also, I think a button-up or hoodie with pockets could also suffice if you needed it. Button-up shirts. Personally, I was running hot the entire healing process and didn't need to wear anything over my binder. I'd say you don't need to go out of your way to buy new ones, and honestly, any hoodie or a cardigan with pockets could adequately work. Things I thought were optional. A step stool. I already had one, so I did use this some. But if you were proactive and just moved the higher up stuff you use daily, you would be totally fine. A TV or desk tray. I already use one for work, and I found it helpful, but not mandatory. I could eat at the table pretty quickly, but I did like using it for beverages while I was resting. A bidet. You can wipe while healing, and while it isn't necessary, it does help a lot. They're also expensive, and I do think you could get by just by using a rinsing bottle or something similar. But honestly, my partner just wanted one after visiting Japan, so it was completely just an excuse for us. Now, I just wanted to answer a few questions I received online before closing this video out. How much did it cost? So no one, including our insurance or even our chosen hospital, could give us a rough number beforehand because that's just how bad the healthcare system is. But for context, we have a good amount saved in our HSA thanks to my partner's office job, and essentially thought at worst we'd have to pay our out-of-pocket maximum. No surprises, we hit the maximum. They billed everything to the insurance for around $30K, which is hard to compare if you pay out of pocket, because I've heard people paying anything from $2K to $20K, just depending on the area, the clinic, etc. And I know a lot of people want to know this number so they know what to save up for, but it's just so unpredictable. And that's why getting this care is unfortunately a big privilege right now. Could you do this healing without a support person? I think this depends on your own judgment. You will need someone to drive you home because you won't be able to. Personally, I really need that assistance the first 48 hours, especially with feeding myself, but honestly, after that, not as big of a deal. Like actually, it surprised me how quickly I could take care of myself after. I'd probably say you need a friend or someone close by at least those first 48 hours. I think if you really prepared beforehand, had food ready to go, everything in reach, you could technically do it on your own. I probably wouldn't though, but that's very easy for me to say as someone who lives with my spouse. I just think the emotional support was also very needed for me early on. Did hypermobile EDS have an impact on the process? You know, surprisingly, my doctor was not very concerned about this. The only thing that they really flagged was potentially slower healing, and yeah, that happened. Otherwise, this may be an unpopular opinion, but I actually think already dealing with chronic pain prepared me a lot for this. Like, this kind of just felt like a bad flare-up month on extreme, if that makes sense. Like yes, it amplified the issues I already had, but nothing I'm not used to dealing with. All that to say, this is my experience. And even hypermobile EDS is a spectrum, so what may be easy for me may not be easy for someone else, and vice versa. Do you have any regrets? Yes. I must admit, I have one horrible, terrible regret that's been eating away at me this whole time. I should have done it sooner! Gotcha! Didn't I? What's funny to me is that there probably is a good amount of people hate watching this video right now because they are generally so obsessed with me and other trans people. So let's close this out and piss them off. I have zero regrets, and I was so glad I was able to access this care. Despite what internet creeps say, I could care less about my body pleasing sad, lonely men who have nothing better to do than to stalk trans people online. They love to call us predators, while also demanding to know what is in our pants and telling us how we look so much better before. And true story, love to share underage and freshly 18 pictures of me to prove it. Yeah, I don't think that's making the point you think it is. That just makes you a creep. So let's call these violent transphobes what they are. Sexual predators. Because these people are generally fixated on knowing, seeing, and controlling the genitalia of complete strangers, including children. They can't fathom that we want to do things to our own body that don't please them because they're accustomed to privilege in the male gaze. But guess what? This isn't your body. And say what you want, but I'm the one happily married with a partner of 10 plus years. And I can't fathom this being obsessed with anyone, let alone wasting my time on it. So let me remind you that gender affirming care saves lives. And guess what? People of all genders get gender-affirming care. Cis people get eyelashes, microblading, Botox, hair transplants, ED treatments. You only ban it if we do it. They love to act like we can just walk up and get top surgery one day, as if it isn't a multiple-year process that takes getting approved and diagnosed by multiple medical providers. They just think we're willy-nilly getting surgery as if we haven't been agonizing over it for years, and love to spread the misinformation that we're mutilating children when minors have never been able to access gender-affirming surgery. Only hormone therapies, which are safe and reversible. They love to talk about regret as if they give a damn about us. Top surgery has one of the lowest surgical regret rates of all time, at a staggering 1% or less. Now for context, surgeries as a whole have an estimated regret rate of 14%. Knee replacement surgery, 20%. Corrective spinal surgery, 21%. Do you harass these people too? Didn't think so. And guess what? Someone getting their top surgery still has nothing to do with you. Y'all just don't like trans people, a staggering 1% of the population you like to conveniently blame all your problems on. But we're not going anywhere, and I'll gladly take the hate from these weirdos if it means that just one closeted trans person gets to see this experience and know that they don't have to feel this way anymore. In spite of all the shitty things going on in the world right now, you have a right to feel at home in your body. And I'm so damn proud of the community we have fostered in that process. So to all my fellow trans folks watching this, I'm so glad you exist. And if you're hoping to get gender affirming care in the future, I'll be fighting alongside you to make sure you do. Bye friends. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and follow me on all my platforms for semi-daily content.